33rd day of the Omer. Oh, you okay? 33rd day of the Omer, and it's a special day in the sense that although during the Omer period we don't get married, we don't get haircuts, we don't listen to music, but on Lag BaOmer we are permitted to do so. And this year there's a certain freebie, because whenever Lag BaOmer is immediately after Shabbos, like Sunday, so you're allowed to get a haircut on Friday, because you're combining Shabbos and Lag BaOmer. So you can't do it tonight. It doesn't start Thursday night, but you can get a haircut tomorrow. You cannot listen to music, however. The heter of music will only be on Sunday. It will not be. But l'chavit Shabbos, you combine Shabbos and Lag BaOmer to give you such a heter.
Can you still, because you said you're combining Shabbos and Lag BaOmer, obviously can you still cut your hair on Lag?
Yes. So if you miss Friday, you still get Lag BaOmer. But again, Lag BaOmer itself, the simcha doesn't start till the morning. So even weddings, you wouldn't be allowed to make a wedding Lag BaOmer night. You can only make a wedding Lag BaOmer day. So I want to talk a little bit about what is unique about Lag BaOmer. Why would Lag BaOmer bichlal be a special day? What is festive about Lag BaOmer? What is significant about Lag BaOmer? Now, one city that's very, very prominent in Lag BaOmer, or town really, is Meron. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Meron. Meron is a little village. You've been to Meron? Yeah. Meron is a little village. It is right next door to Tzfat, right? There's a valley, there's Tzfat, and then there's a valley, and then there's a little village kind of Meron. They don't even have a hotel. And during most of the year, Meron is a sleepy little place. There's a yeshiva there. And if you were to go to Meron today, you could go to the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. You would have it to yourself. There would be, 10 people there, or whatever it is. You could spend hours and hours and hours by the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who I'll talk about. But if you go on Lag BaOmer, there will be hundreds of thousands of people there. They say it's so crowded in Meron that maybe even Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai leaves and goes somewhere else. Yeah, it's a little bit of a joke. If you remember 2 years ago, there was a great tragedy in Meron because of the overcrowding and stampeding. So there were more than 40 people who died. And again, we pray that there should not be any occurrence of that. They did improve the safety conditions, and Be'ezras Hashem, the crowds will continue to come. I don't know if anyone here is going to Meron this year in particular. I'm sorry?
Yeah, they closed it down.
Oh, the whole thing.
Yeah, because of the risk of Iran and whatever not bombing.
Wow, I didn't hear about that. I'm sorry to hear that, but okay. But be it as it may, Meron is the place where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is buried, and Lag BaOmer in many ways is a way we connect to the neshama of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who's abbreviated Rashbi. So who was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? So the truth is, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai has a strong connection with Rabbi Akiva. He is one of Rabbi Akiva's disciples, but from the second round. If you remember, Rabbi Akiva was an ignorant man. He was a shepherd. He married the daughter of his employer, the wealthiest landowner in Jerusalem. And the landowner was so incensed that his daughter married an ignorant man, that he excommunicated her and he disinherited her, and she lived in poverty, in spite of the fact that he was really, really wealthy. And in addition to her poverty, she then sent her husband to Jerusalem to learn Torah. And she let him go for 12 years. And he came back after the 12 years to pay a visit, and he overheard her saying to somebody said to her, "What type of husband do you have that leaves you for 12 years? And she said, "For Torah learning, I would give him another 12 years. So he turned around. He didn't even say hello. He went back for another 12 years. Why couldn't he have a cup of coffee? Why couldn't he stop? So some commentaries say, because if he would have stopped and he would have really seen what his wife is going through, he wouldn't have been able to go back. But he had to go back. That was his destiny. This is what she wanted. So in a sense, he forced himself to go back. So after the second 12 years, 24 years, he is now the greatest rabbi in Israel. He comes back with 24,000 students. And when he imagine 24,000 students, think what that is. The largest yeshiva in the world, machlokas, how you count it, it's either Mir here or Lakewood in New Jersey. And you're talking about no more than 8,000. No matter how you count it, you have between 7,000 and 8,000. This is 24,000. And he comes back, and this woman dressed in rags comes out to greet him. It's his wife. The students don't know. They think she's a crazy woman. They try to block her. And he utters the immortal words, Shali v'shalochem, all that is mine and all that is yours, Shalahi, is only from her. She is responsible for everything. So can you imagine the great, great joy in her heart? Because all of those years of deprivation, all of those years of suffering, she sees what it produced. That's a remarkable thing. And yet, tragically, those 24,000 students died. We don't know exactly what year, and we don't even know if it was in the same year. Maybe it was over a time, but they died between Pesach and Shavuos. And that is the reason why we observe mourning customs of not getting married, etc., because we mourn the deaths of the students of Rabbi Akiva. But it is said on Lag BaOmer, they stopped dying, meaning some didn't die. Now that either means that was the end of the plague, or Lag BaOmer was a break. Lag BaOmer was a hiatus. That's why, as you know, there are two minhagim. Some people end all of the Sefirot restrictions from Lag BaOmer onwards. Others have Lag BaOmer as a break, but then it comes back again. So, so Rabbi Akiva lost everything. He lost all of his students. His wife died shortly thereafter. My speculation, which has no source at all, is that his wife may have died out of heartbreak, because here she struggled for 24 years. She finally sees the blessing in what was accomplished, and then that blessing is taken away. That could kill you. Rabbi Akiva, however, didn't give up. Rabbi Akiva started again. He was already a very old man, and this is towards the end of his life. I mean, think about it just in human terms. You built something up. You suffered and you struggled, and you built something up tremendously. And then it's all taken away from you. And you're very old anyway. You lost your wife, you're alone. Most of us might throw in the towel, just wait to die. But Rabbi Akiva didn't give up. He started again with 5 students. 5. He had 24,000. He started with 5. Among those 5 were Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And the Gemara uses Rabbi Akiva as an example of never giving up. If you've accomplished things in your youth, do not give up. Do it in your old age, whether it's children or whatever, because you never know which one is going to be successful. You know, it's interesting that many of you might have heard of Rav Yosef Soloveitchik. He was the head Rosh Yeshiva at Yeshiva University, the grandson of Rav Chaim Soloveitchik. And I remember in the, I think it was the late 1960s, a long time ago, he suffered 3 bereavements in very short succession. He lost a brother, he lost his mother, and then he lost his wife. So he sat Shiva, 3 Shivas like in a row. And obviously he was very broken, and although he did teach Torah for more than 10 years after that, but people who knew him well, I did not know him well, say he never really recovered. But at the end of his 3rd Shiva, he said a very, very beautiful thought that I always remember. Do you know the famous Chazal that say, this world is not the first world. God made many worlds before this world that were destroyed. And the Meforshim say, by the way, that doesn't mean other planets. That actually means Earth itself may have been destroyed by the ice ages, meteorite showers. In fact, at Tiferes Yisrael, one of the commentators in the Mishnah actually says that that might be the explanation of dinosaurs and fossils that are much older than 5784, because they represent remnants from prior worlds on Earth that God destroyed. Right? So be it as it may, this is called Borei Olamos. God created many worlds, umachrivan, that he destroyed. So Rav Soloveitchik said, what was the point of God making worlds that he then destroyed? Why bother making them? So he said that maybe God wants us to learn a lesson, that even if our world gets destroyed, we go on and we try to create new worlds. Because that's what God did. His worlds were destroyed. Of course, he destroyed it, but his worlds were destroyed. He went on and created. That is the directive to the human being. That is the directive to the Jewish people. Don't give up. That's been our history. After the Holocaust, after all of the different events, after the Churban Beis HaMikdash. Everything that's happened twice, everything that's happened. We got to come back. You got to keep going. Whether it's the national calamities of Churban Beis HaMikdash, Holocaust, whether it's the individual tragedies that people suffer. God's message is, when you've lost everything, create it again. And that's what Rabbi Akiva did. That part of the story we often don't focus on. But, I mean, obviously 24,000 people dying is an awesome tragedy in and of itself. I know that I'm kind of myopically looking at it from Rabbi Akiva's individual perspective. I understand that there's a broader perspective, of course. But just looking at it through the eyes of the one person, Rabbi Akiva, the idea that after losing 24,000, he said, I'm going to start again. There's something very moving and powerful about that idea of not giving up. And indeed, the main Tanoim of the Mishnah come from the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. They're the ones of the Mishnah, and therefore they're the basis of the Gemara. So the whole Torah Shebaal Peh comes down to us primarily through those students of Rabbi Akiva. Right? So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was of that second generation, of the second 5. And there's an old tradition that he died on Lag BaOmer. And therefore we have a big celebration at the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, the obvious question you'll ask me is, well, why would you celebrate the day of his death? Why would the day of his death be a celebration? Lehepech, the day of his death should be something sad. The answer is, you're right. Normally the day of death is sad. But on the day of his death, before he died, he revealed the great secret mysteries of the Torah that are in the book that we call the Zohar. Right? The Zohar is the main book of Kabbalah, and the primary author, it's based on the teachings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Again, I'm touching or I'm alluding to the debate that not everything in the Zohar is from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but I don't want to get into that. But the core of the teachings are Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and therefore precisely on the day of his death, a great holy light came into the world, teachings of fire and passion, which is also why Lag BaOmer is connected to fire as well. The fiery spirituality of right, because the nature of fire is to reach up to God. Okay? So, reason number 1 for the joy of Lag BaOmer is it is a celebration of the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and in particular, the mystical ideas that he revealed to the world that will bring us closer and closer to Mashiach. The Vilna Gaon, who was not a Chassid, we think of Kabbalah, we always think of Chassidim, and it's true. Chassidus has a big influence in Kabbalah, but the Vilna Gaon was not a Chassid. And yet the Vilna Gaon writes that the Geula will come only through the learning of Kabbalah. It's interesting. The Vilna Gaon, who of course was an absolute master of Babylonian Talmud, Jerusalem Talmud, everything. But he said there was a special role for the learning of Kabbalah. Now, that leaves us in a bit of a quandary, because normally you're not supposed to learn Kabbalah till you've mastered the whole Talmud, and you have to be married, and some say you have to be 40 years old, all sorts of conditions. So, Samayach is not going to be offering courses in Zohar or courses in Kabbalah. But, on some level, maybe I shouldn't call it that way, but something that might be called Kabbalah light is actually appropriate for us, meaning we should try to have a little bit of exposure, a little taste of some of these ideas, because they can elevate us, they can inspire us. Right? So when we say, don't learn Kabbalah until you're 40, we're not talking about you can't mention something from the Zohar. Of course you can. It means you don't do heavy-duty, writings of the Arizal. You don't get totally immersed in it because it's dangerous to a person unless they're spiritually mature and grounded in Torah. But that doesn't mean, we can't share some Kabbalistic thoughts. Many of us find them very, very inspiring. And as the Vilna Gaon says, it brings us closer to the light of Mashiach. So, that is reason number one for Lag BaOmer. It is the celebration of the revelation of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So let me just mention once again a little bit of the narrative of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. At one point, his life was in danger because the Romans wanted to kill him because he said bad things about the Romans. He said negative things about the Romans. He and his son hid in a cave for 12 years. And during those 12 years, trees sprouted up, giving them fruit. Springs of water opened up, giving them water. Birds brought them meat. I'm not sure what the hechsher was. Did the meat have a plumba? Did it have a little designator, Eda Charedis, or whatever it is? God took care of them in a supernatural, miraculous way. After 12 years, they get word that they can leave the cave. Their enemies have died. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai encounters Jewish people doing farming, doing work, doing regular things. He couldn't understand it. He was on a madrega where the only thing you did with your life was mitzvos, davening, meditation, learning. And God will take care of everything else. He couldn't understand how people could waste their lives on transient, ephemeral, temporary things. The way he expressed it was, Manichen chaye olam. They are abandoning eternal life. Va'oskim b'chaye shah. And they're spending their time on temporary things. So Chazal say he looked at the farmer, and the farmer burnt up in fire. Died. Now again, this does not mean at all he intended to kill the farmer. I can guarantee you that he was not intending to kill the guy. But it means the kedusha around him was so great that people couldn't endure. They just vanished. So God said, you're not ready to leave the cave. Go back. He goes back to the cave with his son for another year. At the end of the year, so it's 13 years altogether, he comes out of the cave. It's Erev Shabbos, Friday. He meets a farmer who is carrying 2 bundles of hadassim. Hadassim are myrtle. And once again, he's thinking this guy is just working, and he's about to give him his heat vision, his x-ray vision. And the person says, oh, I have 2 bundles in honor of Shabbos. 1 bundle of aromatic hadassim is because of remember the day of Shabbos to keep it holy. That's in the 4th commandment in Yisrael. And the other bundle is the other version of the commandment in V'yeschanan, Shamor, observe the laws of Shabbos, Shamor and Zachar. So at that point, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai reached a certain perception that even if you are involved in the physicality of the world, you can still serve God. Here was a guy that was a farmer. He was planting and harvesting. He was doing all that stuff that a year before, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai thought was despicable. But he sees that even through that economic activity, the person is serving God. So, this is theme number 1 of Lag BaOmer. We want to connect to the spirit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, as you told me, and I actually didn't know this, this year it will not be possible to connect in a proximity way by going to Meron. Although I bet you, there are always people who sneak under the borders that there will be people at Meron even this year, but whatever. But the point is this, in truth, the real way you connect to the neshama of a holy person is not by going to their grave or whatever, but it's by learning their teachings, trying to emulate their lives. So you can connect to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in Yerushalayim itself. I mean, Yerushalayim is obviously, but even in North Dakota or LA or whatever it is. Because neshamas don't connect by physical proximity. Neshamas connect by spiritual connection. Okay, so even if you're not Zocha this year to go to Meron, you'll connect maybe in a deeper way, a more meaningful way, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
Should we study Zohar?
It's not a bad idea, but again, you need to be selective. In other words, Zohar is interesting. Not everything in the Zohar is inaccessible. In fact, around 60% of the Zohar is like learning a medrash. Now, medrash is hard, but medrash is accessible to us. It's only like 40%, I'm giving approximate numbers. It's only around 40% of the Zohar that's heavy-duty Kabbalah. So Kabbalah and Zohar are not the same thing. Kabbalah are the mystic doctrines of Judaism that are more or less beyond our comprehension. The Zohar is the main repository of that Kabbalah, but there's much in the Zohar that's not Kabbalah in that way. So in fact, there is a series, Rav Daniel Frisch, who wrote an excellent, amazing commentary on the Zohar called Masuk Midvash, published a series of 4 volumes, that are called Niglos HaZohar. That actually means the revealed parts of the Zohar that anybody could learn. And he gives a translation and a commentary to it. So if you can get hold, I haven't seen it here in Samayach, but we're not big. Actually, we do have a lot of Kabbalistic books hidden away in different places, but I don't think we have the book Niglos HaZohar. But if you could wangle a copy of Niglos HaZohar, that would be exactly the type of Zohar that would be appropriate for us to learn. Okay, but so that's theme number 1 of Lag BaOmer, connecting to the spiritual legacy and the spiritual essence and the message of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But now there's theme number 2 of Lag BaOmer, totally different theme, and that is Lag BaOmer was the day that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying. This is actually before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the question would become, why would they stop dying in Lag BaOmer? I mean, what is special? The 33rd day of the Omer is the 33rd day of the Omer. What would be intrinsic to this day that a magefa, a plague that is wiping out tens of thousands of people, would all of a sudden stop? So here we have to go back to the Gemara in Yevamos. The Gemara in Yevamos actually explains, yes, the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died in a plague, but what was the spiritual cause for their death? And the Gemara gives you a reason. The Gemara says that the 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died because they did not show proper kavod. They did not show proper honor for each other, proper respect. Now, Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch explains very beautifully, what does it mean they didn't show proper respect? Let's imagine you would have seen a video. Were they pushing each other in line? Were they insulting each other? Were they saying you're an idiot? Presumably, if you're a student of Rabbi Akiva, you're going to be a chashuv person. You're not going to behave in a wrong way. So Rav Hirsch says, kavod, honor, respect, is not about etiquette. It's not about politeness. We can assume that the students of Rabbi Akiva were totally polite. But kavod comes from a shirish kaved. Kaved means heavy. I don't mean physical heaviness, but I look at a person, I see them as people of substance, people of weight, people of heft, people of gravitas, to use a fancy word, Meaning, kavod is the ability to perceive within another person something beautiful and something good. Now, I can be polite to somebody, and I can even be very nice to somebody because I think I'm a tzaddik. What I'm really thinking is, that guy is worthless, but I'm such a nice guy that I'll be nice even to him. Call it noblesse oblige or whatever you want to call it. Kavod is exactly the opposite idea. I look at you and I see your chashivos. I see your substance. I see your worth. What Chazal are telling us is, for reasons that are still a little bit hard to understand, the students of Rabbi Akiva did not see the value in each other. Maybe, we could speculate, they had such a great Rebbe that they felt they didn't need each other, meaning, what do I need to learn from you? I'm connected to the big guy. But whatever it is, they didn't show kavod zealous, and therefore it's brought down in the Sforim that this is why we mourn the students of Rabbi Akiva. It isn't just, 24,000 people died. I mean, that's a tragedy. But to be brutally frank, we've had worse tragedies. Why am I mourning after 2,000 years, almost 2,000 years, the students of Rabbi Akiva, when we've had crusades in which we had Holocaust? We lost a lot more than 24,000 people. Why am I so fixated on the 24,000 people? The answer is, it's not that I'm fixated on the 24,000 people, but I'm thinking about the reason for their death. They didn't show proper kavod. They didn't see the good in each other. They didn't see the radiance and the beauty and the worth in each other. So I got to work on seeing the chashivas of another Jew. I have to work on Avas Yisrael. I have to work on Achdus. And I have to work at not looking down at people, focusing on their inferiorities and defects, but to see the goodness that is within them. So it's not mourning just for the sake of mourning. It's mourning for the sake of fixing. And this answers another question, and that is, well, okay, they didn't have proper kavod for each other. Do you die for that? Do you deserve to die for that reason? I mean, they died because they didn't have proper kavod for each other? So one way of understanding it is, this is not the nature of a punishment, but rather, these 24,000 people were going to be the Torah leaders of the next generation. They were going to be the teachers. They were the rabbis. They were the influences. They were the inspiration. But what God is saying is, a person who does not see the worth in the other cannot be a teacher of Torah, cannot be the leader of the generation. So it's not that, I'm punishing you because you're committing the sin of not having kavod. It's just, you people cannot be the leaders. You cannot be the transmitters of Torah. So I got to take you away and replace you with other people, the 5 students of Rabbi Akiva. Right? This is a very important idea of what kavod. Kavod is not etiquette. It's not politeness. We assume that they kept all the manners they had to keep. It's a certain attitude of how you look at another person. So now the question still becomes, so what is magical about Lag BaOmer that they should stop dying? So here, I'm going to be very, very, very oversimplifying a deep Kabbalistic idea, but I'm going to keep it just simple, just so you'll grasp the basic idea. We know that each week of Sefirah, through the Sefiros of Kabbalah, are linked to a biblical personality. Week 1 of the Sefirah is Avraham's week, who represents loving kindness. Week 1 of Sefirah is, of course, the week of Pesach. Week 2 of Sefirah is Yitzchak, the midah of Gevurah, inner strength. Week 3 of Sefirah is Tiferes, beauty, which is Yaakov Avinu. Week 4 is eternity or victory or endurance, Netzach, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. Week 5, glory, is Aharon. Week 6, Yesod, foundation, is Yosef. And week 7, the final week of the Omer, is Malchus, kingship, connected with David HaMelech. You'll note that this is the order of the Ushpizin on Sukkot as well, which is not chronological. It's based on these Kabbalistic Sefirot. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, David. Now, what gets a little more complicated is that since there are 7 days in every week, each day is also linked to the particular sphere. So let's say it this way. The first week of the Omer is the week of Chesed. The first day of the Omer, in other words, the second day of Pesach, is called Chesed Shebechesed, the day of loving kindness within the week of loving kindness. In fact, many Shidurim will have those words. Chesed Shebechesed. Day 2 is Gevura, the inner strength that's within Chesed. Now, don't confuse the second day of the first week with the first day of the second week. The second day of the first week is Gevura within Chesed. The first day of the second week is Chesed, that's within Gevura. Now, these are very complicated, but there are excellent books, Svarim in Hebrew and in English, that try to explain behaviorally and emotionally a meditation and a divine midah that you should try to emulate for each day of Sefirah. What is Gevura Shebechesed? What is Chesed Shebegevura? Right? But this is the mapping. Every day of Sefirah is mapped both based on the week that it's in and based on the day within that week. So now, let's map and sequence. By the way, not that it's important to you, but this is my day. You know, this is what? This is the 5th week of the Omer, which is Aaron, and the second day, which is Yitzchak. So Yitzchak Aaron. So this is Mamish, my day of my name is Yitzchak Aaron. That's my day of Sefirah. So each of you, if any of you have any of these combinations, think about that there may be a day of the Omer. That's your special day. So now, let's map Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is day 33, right? Day 33 is the 5th day of the 5th week. See, don't be confused. Although we're saying 4 weeks and X number of days, but we're in the 5th week. We finished 4 weeks. We're in the 5th week. 5th week of the 5th day of the 5th week. What's number 5? Hod, glory. Whose glory? Aaron. Lag BaOmer is the glory of the glory. It's Aaron squared. Aaron squared. Aaron, Aaron. Aaron in the week. Aaron in the day. Why is that important? The spiritual midah of Aaron is the lover of peace, the pursuer of peace. Even more so than Moshe. Moshe was the greatest prophet who ever lived and whoever will live. But Moshe had to be tough. That was his job sometimes. Moshe had to enforce the law. Moshe Rabbeinu had to be tough. And many people didn't automatically have a relationship with Moshe. In fact, you think about the desert. Everyone heard Moshe when he taught them the Torah, but how many people ever even met Moshe Rabbeinu on a one-to-one basis? We don't know. Aaron was much closer to the problems that people had. That's why Chazal darshan that when Aaron died, the level of mourning was even greater than when Moshe died. So Aaron represents the quality of relating to another person with respect, not just politeness, to see the good in a person, to let other people shine, let other people get credit. In fact, the whole idea that Aaron gave up his role as leader with happiness to give it to Moshe. itself is an expression that Aaron always saw the good in the other. So now, listen to this cheshbon here. If the spiritual sin of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva was they didn't see the value and the good in each other, but on Lag BaOmer, the spiritual aura that comes into the world is the double dose of Aaron, then in a sense the scales fall from their eyes. On the day of Lag BaOmer, they can look around and see what they didn't even notice before. The radiance, the goodness, the Kedusha. Liberated from their prejudices, liberated from the negativities, liberated from the critical eye. So therefore they become liberated from the plague, because the plague comes because they didn't show kavod. On Lag BaOmer, because of Aaron, they could perceive that kavod. They become liberated. So this is theme number 2 of Lag BaOmer, in which we strive to connect to the midah of Aaron HaKohen via Hod Shebahot, and to be misakein the chet of the students of Rabbi Akiva by seeing the kavod in each other. So B'kitzur, just to summarize in one sentence, the 2 ideas of Lag BaOmer is, 1, to connect to the spirit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and number 2, to connect to the rectification of the sin of the students of Rabbi Akiva by having kavod for each other. So the final point I want to bring out is that in some ways, these 2 ideas are a little bit in contradiction with each other. Why is that so? Because in the world that we live in, we often find, tragically, sadly, that the more I'm connected to Torah, the more passionate I am, the more I steig is Yiddish for growing, the more I become religious and passionate, I tend to be less patient, less tolerant of those people who are not living up to my standards. Or the other way around, if I become a tolerant, open, kind person, I tend not to be that committed to learning and all the mitzvahs. I'm okay, you're okay, everything is fine. So you tend to have 2 different personalities here. You either have the true believer fanatic, I don't mean that negative necessarily, who is verbrennt, fiery and consumed, who doesn't care about people who aren't living up to his standard. Or you have the loving, giving, generous person who's not that committed like to all of the halachas. Right? It tends to be one or the other. But I think the 2 lessons of the Omer teach us this is not a binary choice. Be like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, totally committed, totally passionate, not wasting time on the temporary, the ephemeral, the transient, focusing only on avodas Hashem. But remember, Hod Shebahod, Aaron HaKohen, to still be a lover of peace, a pursuer of peace. You got to do both. Now the emes is, this whole talk could be a commentary on a single pasuk in the book of Zechariah. He was one of the last prophets. Zechariah said, Ha'emes v'hashalom ehavo. A Jew must love truth, and a Jew must love peace. Now, the Kotzker Rebbe used to say, it's easy to love truth if you don't care about peace. Meaning, I'll stand for the truth. I don't care about, your feelings. And it's easy to have peace if you don't care about the truth. I'm okay, you're okay, whatever you say is fine, as long as we get along. So, it's easy to love truth and don't care about peace. And it's easy to love peace and don't care about truth. But the Navi says, we're not given that easy choice. You must love truth and you must love peace. Don't allow one to cancel out the other. Be passionate in your avodas Hashem. Focus on what's important. And at the same time, look at others with love and patience and respect where they're coming from. And these are, I would suggest, the two themes of Lag BaOmer. One is to connect your Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who represents the passionate fire. And the other is to remember the students of Rabbi Akiva, who didn't have proper kavod for each other, but on Lag BaOmer they were able to achieve that level, and we too could try to achieve that level. Now it's interesting, our street is of course Shimon HaTzadik Street, and that's because across the street, I assume a lot of people will be going there, we have the kever of Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik was way before Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon HaTzadik was one of the first Kohanim Gedolim of the second Beis HaMikdash. In fact, he is the one in Pirkei Avos who taught the very famous teaching that the world stands on three pillars: Torah, Avoda, Gemilut Chasadim. That's Shimon HaTzadik. And it's interesting, I don't know, it became a custom in Yerushalayim, and I don't know what's going to be this year. I assume people will still go, that thousands of people go to the kever of Shimon HaTzadik. Now, I don't know the source of that, because the truth is, I'm not aware of any association between Shimon HaTzadik and Lag BaOmer. We have an association, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Lag BaOmer. So it's almost as if, hey, well, first name is Shimon, so I can't go to that Shimon, so I'll go to that Shimon. So, assuming it's safe, I'm not telling people to go, but if it is safe, it might be a very inspirational experience that does not take you away from Torah learning that much, to kind of go across the street with people and daven at the kever of Shimon HaTzadik. So I wish you a Lag BaOmer Samayach, and may we be zocheh to incorporate both of these lessons of Lag BaOmer.
Thank you for listening to this Samayach production. To find out more and to partner in our mission, please visit ohr.edu.